Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about fantasy. All things fantasy. Audrey's ultimate guide to fantasy. So I haven't read that much fantasy, but I think I'm decently into it. So first I'm going to do the ones that I don't physically own, so I just don't forget about them. I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which is the Crowns of Nyaxia series. It has 2 books plus a novella in the middle of them. This is about a girl who lives in a vampire world. However, she is not a vampire, and she goes to these trials to try to win this thing from like a goddess to be able to like get her wish and like be as powerful as her father, pretty much. And then she meets this other guy while doing it and stuff happens. I really enjoyed the first book in this, The Serpents and the Wings of the Night. Enjoyed a lot. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5. I really liked it. And then I really liked the first one, and I liked the little novella in between. I rated that a 4 out of 5 also, which is pretty high for a novella because usually you don't get as connected. But it was still like pretty long. I feel like it wasn't like a short novella. It was a decent amount. And that's about characters you meet in the second book. The second book I didn't like as much. It was just very boring at the beginning and hard to get into. I think I rated that a 3 out of 4. I'm pretty positive. Alright, but I do recommend it. It's fun. It is. And I like the writing. It's pretty easy to understand. But I wouldn't say don't pick that up first. Then I read the Cinder series, which is actually called The Lunar Chronicles, and I read this pretty recently. It's a young adult series, and they're retellings of princesses. So Cinder is of Cinderella. It's about this cyborg that turns out stuff happens, and she figures out more about herself. And then there's these lunars, and they live on the moon, and they're trying to like take over her world. So it's her trying to like kind of save that, and she meets other people along the way, because then there's Scarlet, Cress is my favorite. So we have Scarlet, Cress, and then Winter. And then there's some novellas in there you can read as well. I read Fairest, which is about the lunar queen. I really enjoyed this. I think it's very great if you're trying to get into fantasy, because I feel as though the world isn't that hard to understand because it is still Earth. There's just like more to it. I felt like it was pretty easy to understand. They explain it pretty well. So I recommend it. I liked it a lot. I rated Cinder, I think 3 stars. It wasn't my favorite, but it was still really good. Scarlet, I rated 4. Cress, I rated 4. Winter, I rated, I think 4 as well. I really liked all the others. It was a super good series. Super easy, super fun. I miss the characters a lot. I totally recommend it. It kind of has that found family feeling. So I really recommend that. And then the third and final books that, well, it's 2. It's a duology. I read that I don't own the physical copy of is Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. So Divine Rivals is about this girl that works at a newspaper, and there's a war going on between goddess and a god. And then she kind of goes to the war front, and one of her rivals from the newspaper is involved as well, and there's romance, a romantasy. I recommend this if you aren't into fantasy yet, because the first book, it gets a little more fantasy in the second book, but the first book I feel like isn't that fantasy heavy, so it's easier to get into because there's not much of a world building. It's kind of like a normal world. There's just a couple things that are kind of fantasy-ish. So I totally recommend that. I rated that 4 stars, and I rated Ruthless Vows 3. I didn't like that one as much, but it was still really good. A lot of people love Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. I feel like I'm the odd one out that I just like enjoyed it, but it's not my favorite. So I totally recommend those for newbies. and that is complete series. All those that I just talked about are completed, so that's good for you. And now let's get on to my shelves. So I guess we'll start from top to bottom. Actually, I want to start down here. Let me grab something real quick. These are just 3 random ones I have. So first I want to talk about One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. I love Olivia Blake's writing. I've only read this by her, but it was just so beautiful, her writing is. However, it is a bit confusing, and I think that probably goes for all her books because the way she writes is just so like, there's just a lot to it. So if you're just picking up fantasy, I wouldn't go for this right away. But if you're interested in more fantasy that's really beautiful writing, I totally recommend this. It's One for My Enemy. This is a Romeo and Juliet reimagining. It's about witches' families that live in New York City, and they're 2 like families that don't like each other, and then they connect. And the one family has 3 boys and the other has 7, is it? Yes, 7 girls. And it's kind of their story. It was so beautiful. I love this. I rated it 4 stars. It was super good. Again, I don't recommend picking it up right away, but it is really nice because it's not a big series. It is a standalone. Then we have Powerless. This is I think it's young adult. This is a young adult fantasy about a girl who, in a society that has powers, is powerless. And those people can be executed if they don't have powers. So she has to hide that, but then she gets thrown into these trials, and it's just a lot. So this one I loved. Again, I rated this 5 stars. However, it is a little difficult to get into. I feel like the first couple chapters, I was like, but then it gets good. It gets really good. And it's just so good. Oh my gosh. And if you don't like anything spicy or anything like that, this is a spice-free one. And I really recommend it. But it is, the politics in here are pretty heavy. So again, I think this shouldn't be maybe your first one you pick up, but pick it up. Like, it's pretty good. You could pick it up first if you want to get into fantasy, I feel like. This is not a completed series. Another one comes out in July, I believe, sometime in the summer. It's called Reckless. And yeah, I don't know if that's the last one. I don't think it is. So beware of that. You are going to have to be waiting if you read this, which is painful because it leaves on a pretty good cliffhanger. Then I read Brandon Sanderson. He is the king of fantasy, I've heard. However, I've only read one of his. I would not read him if you're just getting into fantasy, because it's not romantasy. His books are not romantasy at all. I mean, it had some romance in it, but nothing crazy. That wasn't the main aspect of it. This is about a girl who, her sister was trained to go to this other land to kind of marry the king so that they could have like a peace treaty type thing. Well, then stuff happens and she goes instead, and then her sister ends up following her to try to save her. So it's like all that. It is very politics driven. There's a lot to it. I rated it a 3 out of 4. I really liked the idea of the book. However, it was just boring and a lot of times for me. But I am going to give more of his books a try because I've heard he's really good. Also, my uncle really likes him, and he told me I probably should have not read this one first. But if you want less romance and want to get more into fantasy, and just like the politics of the worlds and stuff like that, Brandon Sanderson, I think, is a really good way to do that. No books were harmed in this. Now let's get into these. I'm going to start down here actually. This is my SJM shelf. I actually have not read Crescent City, but I bought these pretty covers and I want to display them. So there's that. I did read ACOTAR. ACOTAR, I recommend 100% if you want to get into fantasy as being one of the first ones you read. This is because it's so easy, and it's about this girl who ends up killing a wolf that ends up actually being a fae, which is like a magical creature type thing. They're kind of like fairies, but they're not fairies because they don't have like the wings and stuff, but they do have like powers. So she ends up killing a fae, and then someone from the fae world comes and gets her and is like, you can't be killing our people, like you need to be in prison. So then he takes her to the fae world, and it kind of goes from there. So the first book is kind of like a Beauty and the Beast reimagining, but not really. The rest of the series has nothing to do with that. This series, I love it so much. I have 2 friends that are reading it right now. Well, one just finished it and then another's just starting it. She's on Akamov, and I'm living for their text messages of what's going on. It's so great. Anyway, just how it is she's kind of learning. Feyre is the main character. When Feyre gets taken into the Fae world, she's learning with you what's going on. So I really like how that's done, because the reader is learning with the main character. So it's not as hard to get into, as much world building, because you kind of learn at the same time. I do think some people are hooked right away. I feel like it was a little hard to get into for me for this first one. But after I got like into it, it was so good, especially the ending. I don't want to spoil anything, but I love the ending. And then once you read this, you're hooked. You need to read the rest. My favorite in the series is Akamov, which is, I think, really romance heavy. This is a romantasy for real. So if you're used to romance, this is really good for you. And then I love A Court of Silver Flames, which follows a different couple than the rest of the books. But this book, I want it tattooed on me, the whole thing. Actually, that would be awkward because it's very spicy. That would be weird. So this does have spice, by the way. But yes, I 100% recommend this if you are just getting into fantasy and need some romance with it as well. It's so good. Now let's go up here. Let's start with the Caraval trilogy. Caraval is about these girls, these sisters, that go to this, like, it's kind of like a carnival-ish type thing. But it's not. It's like this game that's played, and it's like there's magic involved and stuff like that. It's hard to explain. I think you really just have to get into it. But they go to this like game to watch this game, and it turns out the one sister goes missing, so the other sister kind of has to join the game and figure it out. And it does have romance in it. Super cute romance. I loved it. I gave this one a 4 stars. This follows the one sister and her romance. Legendary follows the next sister and kind of her romance. And this kind of follows both of them, finale, and wraps it all up. I loved these. I thought they were such a fun series. I don't think they're anything crazy. Like, I wouldn't rate them super, super high, but they were so fun. And I feel like a lot of people hate on them for no reason. So I haven't read Once Upon a Broken Heart, which is a spin-off trilogy off of a character in these. But I totally recommend these, especially if you like more of like a princessy vibe. Then we have One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. This is a duology. And if you watched any videos on this channel, you know how much I love these. Both are 5 stars for me. I love these so much. I would not say you should read them as your first, because I feel like there is a lot to them. Like the magic system, mailman just showed up. And I have like a huge window that looks out, and he could definitely see me standing here. So that's why I kind of... Anyway, I wouldn't recommend this just because there's a lot to it. However, I don't think it's the hardest. So after you've read 1 or 2 fantasy worlds, I feel like you could definitely get into this and understand it pretty well. This is about a girl who, in a world where they don't really have powers unless you have these certain cards that only like the rich people have, pretty much, you're not supposed to have these powers because there's this sickness that goes around and you're supposed to be executed if you have this sickness. However, she was not. She hid it, and then she has like this voice in her head that like gives her kind of powers and certain things after having that sickness. So it's kind of her story about that. I love it so much. It's hard to explain. You have to get into it, I feel like. But they're so good. I love them so much. Alright. That is a finished series, as well as Caraval. Now we have Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. This is the Empyrean series that is not finished. So it does leave on cliffhangers. Okay, so this is about a girl who her mother forces her to become like a dragon rider. So she goes and like has to complete all these tasks and stuff that are very dangerous in order to become a dragon rider. And she is very small and weak and not used to it. Like, she trained to become something else in this world. So yeah, it's really good though. It's like this, so she goes to this like academy to become a dragon rider, and then there's dragons, and it's so fun. I love this. I gave this one a 5-star. Looking back at it, I might put it down to a 4, but at the time I thought it was a 5-star, and I really enjoyed it. I do think that it's one of the easier ones to get into as well. It's not terrible, it hooks you right away. However, Iron Flame is more, this is the second book, and it definitely has more politics and stuff about it, which is a little harder to. I give this a 3-star. I didn't enjoy this one as much, but a lot of people still really like this one. So yeah, I recommend them, and I will keep reading the series. I don't know if I will if they keep pushing out these big of books. I feel like it definitely could have been split into 2 books, but that's fine. So yeah, I think, I don't know when the next one comes out, but I think it's supposed to be a while. I like flipping them over this way because they have the pretty sprayed edges. But yeah, I recommend those. I feel like you could read those. They're very high in romantasy. There's lots of romance in it. So I feel like if you want to get into fantasy, those are a decent gateway as well. Now we have the Grishaverse. This is not the whole Grishaverse. There is 2 more books in it, but I've only read these ones. So we have Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. I didn't really like this one. I gave it 3, 3, 4, I think. I didn't love it. It's about this girl who, in this place where some people have powers, some people don't, and there's kind of like this bad thing going on. Like, it's not really a war, but kind of. My cat just jumped on the couch where you guys are propped, so the camera's moving. Sorry about that. I don't really know how to describe it. I kind of pushed them out of my mind too, because I know I didn't really enjoy them. But yeah. So there's this world, and she finds out she has powers that are like crazy, insane, amazing powers. So then she gets like taken to kind of learn, and then she has to like save the world pretty much. They were okay. I didn't love them. They are young adult, so they're probably easier to get into if you want to. However, then we have Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, which come after this. they're in the same world, different characters, and still like years later. I loved these ones. I gave Six of Crows 4 and Crooked Kingdom 5 stars. I loved them so much. It's about these people, all these people that come together and like do this like heist. So good. I did read these before I went into Shadow and Bone. A lot of people say you should read Shadow and Bone series first just because you learn the world, because it was kind of hard learning the world in Six of Crows. However, I did it, so I feel like you guys could do it too. But it is very fantasy. There's a little bit of romance in it, but it's young adults, so there's nothing crazy with it. And it's not really romance heavy. Six of Crows, Crooked Kingdom, loved them so, so much. I miss them. I think I'm going to reread them soon because I love them so much. They're so good. So, so good. But yeah, they are... Six of Crows is a little hard to get into if you don't know the world, which I did not. But I understood it. Eventually, I got there. So I feel like you could too, if you don't want to read Shadow and Bone first. That's my opinion. Anyway, that's my guide to fantasy. What I think you should read first, what I don't think you should read, what I read. Most of the fantasy books, obviously, you've seen, I've rated them pretty good. I like them, but I also read what people recommend me, so they're usually pretty good. There are, I think, a few random ones I might have read too, but these are like the main ones I wanted to talk about. So yeah, fantasy. Hope you guys enjoyed. Comment down below any fantasy recommendations, what you guys think I should read if you are fantasy lovers, or if you thought this video was helpful. And love you guys. Bye.